Get your last coughs out. We're live.
We are live.
Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. I hope everyone had a really nice weekend. I can tell you one person who had the best weekend was probably Mo, our
absolutely.
dog. After hearing all the positive reviews from our watchers, thank you. Smiley Pomeranian was a big hit.
He hopped a flight to Reno this morning, so we won't see him again until this next weekend.
I hope he doesn't get into any trouble.
Nah. But happy Zappadan. Tonight is night 6.
Oh my gosh, it is.
We're a third of the way through.
Wow. Cheers.
Now, last night we went for what I think is one of Frank's best albums, one of his most important albums.
Mm-hmm.
After we shot last night's episode, Alexa said, let's do something weird tomorrow.
And we went weird.
We went deep. In lieu of the album.
Which we don't have.
But talk about an easy cover to draw.
I think that's a Z in there. I think he did that intentionally.
Ben Watson agrees with you.
Yeah. It's Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch, which I actually really like this album.
May 3rd, 1982.
We wanted to pick an 80s album. Well, I wanted to pick an 80s album.
5 years before I was born, 7 years before you. Go for it.
Really dating me there.
I know.
I actually really like this album a lot. And
Me too.
Forgot. I hadn't heard it for probably about 5 or 6 years.
It's been a while.
But
we don't get it out often, do we?
We don't. I find that the 80s was a tough spot for music. But I actually really liked this album, and I remembered how much I liked it, and it's got some really dancey tracks on it, and then some kind of ones that come out of left field and surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that we picked this one. I think that was solid for us.
Yeah, this is certainly a weird album, a deep cut for sure, one that I think is overlooked often, and I think for a reason. We'll get to why as we explore it.
Okay.
But it's a good album. It's memorable, but we don't get it out often. I think that says something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with the opening track.
Yes.
No, Not Now.
I love this song. It's super dancey and catchy. Sure. Yeah, and I think it's really like, he didn't often do dance music, and I don't know if this is meant to be a dance song, but I really like it.
I think it's meant to have sort of a steady beat you can dance to.
I really, really like it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's got lyrics that are kind of silly. There's coded references to the Mormon diet, string beans to Utah, references to the Osmonds, Hawaiian punch, stuff like that.
I love Hawaiian punch.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's got a funky bass line. That's Art Barrow, who we've met.
Yes, and is awesome. It couldn't be nicer.
Yeah, let's give a shout out to Art real quick.
Hi, Art.
So first of all, Art Barrow's super cool. Most of Frank Zappa's bandmates are, I'm not going to encourage the public to be like, oh, flood their inboxes, but they're accessible and they don't reject fan mail. They're generally pretty flattered to hear that. And Art I've been in touch with for 11 years now, and he's a really cool dude.
He's super nice and really down to earth. He's incredibly talented, but he's also just a great person to have a conversation with, which I really appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, his bass playing is phenomenal. This is just such a great, it's a really good opener.
It's very disco-y.
It is disco-y, but it's not disco-y in an annoying way.
No.
It's disco-y in a good way, dancey way.
Yeah. So on the record, both sides have tracks that all segue together, just like We're Only in It for the Money, just like a couple of Frank's albums. And this one segues right into what was easily Frank's most popular song from the 80s, the song that put him on the map to a whole new generation, Valley Girl.
Definitely. This is the track whenever I talk to like my family or other people, like coworkers or friends about Zappa, Valley Girl is like one of the first songs that they mention. And they always do the Valley Girl, she's a Valley Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That and the Valley Girl voice.
Oh gosh.
Like, oh my God.
Moon Unit really, I think, is the star of this. For
she
sure.
gets a co-writing credit for it.
She does get a co-writing credit.
There's a story to this song behind it.
Tell all of us.
Well, she slipped a note under
Frank's door
that said, "Dear Frank,
Dear Frank.
My name is Moon Unit, and I'm your daughter, and I'd like to spend time with you. And I mean, how precious is that?
So how old is she in this track? She's got to be a teenager.
She was born in 1967. This was recorded 1981, 1982.
Okay.
So 14, 15.
Okay, yeah. So
And she used to crack her dad up at for them, the dinner table, for him, the breakfast table.
right, because he kept very weird Hunter S. Thompson like hours.
Minus the drugs.
Minus the drugs.
Although for him it was caffeine and nicotine.
I would just wonder, like.
But she would crack him up at the dinner table doing the Valley Girl voice.
Yeah.
So I think that just naturally led to her doing that on a record. It propelled her to a degree of pop stardom.
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
She briefly was a VJ on MTV.
That I did know.
And I believe one of her brothers was as well, either Dweezil or Ahmed.
I feel like it was Dweezil.
Probably Dweez, because he was doing pop music at the time.
I just wonder, like, Zappa.
My Mother is a Space Cadet. It was called.
Zappa was so like, he was just so woke and hip, and I wonder if I would guess he would have raised his kids to be just as like tapped in as he was.
They are.
So I wonder if, like, even at age 14, which is super cool to think about, but even at age 14 or 15, however old she was when she recorded the song, if she knew about this, like, or if she was able to kind of recognize, like, oh, this like airheaded, very shallow existence about
I think about being into like punk music, which is pretty anti-materialist at that age. At 14, I was listening to the Dead Kennedys, the Sex Pistols, the Clash, and really rejecting a lot of that bullshit that they're mocking with Valley Girl, but from a feminine perspective.
Definitely.
It's certainly a feminized perspective.
And this is another one, I know we've talked about this before, but like, Frank really, like, he wasn't afraid to like call out anyone.
Right.
And this is him calling out that vapid, shallow person. Right.
And I would say it's not so much the kid that he's calling out as the culture that allows that kid to be that way.
Right. Yeah. To care about nothing other than like literally the most shallow of things.
Right.
Yeah.
He talks a bit in the Real Frank Zappa book about parenting. Now, those of you watching, we're a romantic couple as well as a couple of Frank Zappa fans, and we're at a point where childhood is something, or parenthood is something that we're talking about in the near future.
Yeah.
But Frank Zappa talks in his autobiography about parenting, and one of his most choice quotes, I'm going to butcher it because it's not verbatim.
I'm excited to hear it.
But it's something like, you can rate a good parent by how they treat their kid and how they allow their kid to act around other adults. And he said, you have these yuppies who have these like well-behaved child creature things who just like sit and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can have the kids who like you allow to go out and play in the rain. He talks about letting his youngest. So he had 4 kids, Moon Unit, who's here,
right,
Ahmet, Dweezil, strike that reverse, and then Diva, about allowing Diva to go out and play in the rain, and how a lot of other parents would freak out and, oh, you'd catch cold, don't get muddy, but to let kids be kids, but also to talk to them like they're little adults.
They shouldn't freak out. They should let her be absolutely free.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. I agree with you, though.
You're only in it for the money.
Oh my god. I love that.
That was good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That was good.
Don't freak out. She should be absolutely free.
I really like hearing about him as a parent. Because
it's written about in his book. I recommend
that's super cool.
Anyone who's even a little into Frank Zappa, read his book. You'll be a lot more into Frank Zappa, just even as a person. I know folks who hate his music who love his book. Our buddy from the Blue Man Group.
That's true. That's very cool.
Yeah. We're friends with one of the guys from the Blue Man Group.
I'm just a name drop though. Anything else about Valley Girl?
Blue Man number 3.
Anything else about Valley Girl before we move
He's
on?
having a silent shit fit right now. Anything else about Valley Girl? For a guy who rejected commercialism, this was a hit. This got radio play.
It was.
This made Frank popular. I would say this probably fueled his next classical project. he recorded with the LSO the following year.
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt that he needed a hit, wanted a hit, and knew that he had the chops to make a hit.
Yeah.
What's your take on Frank having commercial success? Was it intentional? Was it not?
I don't think he ever did anything intentionally to have commercial success. I just don't think that's who he was as an artist. I think he made the art he wanted to make. I think he was unapologetic about that, and that's one of the reasons why I love his music and love his art. And I think this one he just happened to have a runaway hit with and wasn't expecting it.
I agree. He's not Ray Davies. He can't just conjure a hit and be like, there, boom, saved my career.
I also don't think he ever set out to like make a hit. I don't think he like went into his muffin kitchen and was like,
no, when if we decide to do one of the LSO albums, we can talk about around that time. He said he didn't. Talking about one of his classical works, said, "I don't give a fuck if people like the music."
Right, exactly. I think he
was very blunt about that.
He never set out to be a hit maker. I think he just wanted to do music.
However, and I do want to point this out, he knew what made money. He knew that he could generate revenue from touring. That's why he toured so frivolously, or not frivolously, but diligently through the late 70s at a time where he couldn't record.
Yeah,
allowing him to create backing tracks to create records from. And then same with these albums, like Tinseltown Rebellion is mostly a live album. So I wonder, I think he knew what he needed to do to stay afloat. And that was to have the occasional commercial hit. And I think he knew what he was doing to some degree. And this was also a year after he made a video for MTV that got rejected. So I think he was trying to have some degree of success.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate your point of view.
Yeah.
Next track?
Next track is I Come From Nowhere, featuring from the original Mothers of Invention, Roy Ralphie Strada, who we unfortunately have to share has been incarcerated
for a long time.
Since 2016, and he will be incarcerated until 2036. Presuming he's still alive because he'll be at the age of 93. His crime, child sex abuse.
It's disgusting.
I can't have mercy for that.
Oh my God, no.
When I met Jimmy Carl Black, he talked about knowing that he knew not to leave his grandchild alone around Roy. And this was the late aughts. And apparently he had a record that took him as far back as the mid-90s.
Yikes.
So it kind of makes my ability to appreciate anything with Roy on it next to hard.
Yeah, and this is not a great track, and it has really good guitar on it. I'll say that musically.
His vocal performance is incredibly unorthodox.
The vocals make me feel like I'm stuck inside of a vacuum cleaner. I don't care for it.
Is that a reference to Chunga's Revenge?
You know I like that vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
No, this makes me feel like I'm stuck inside of a bad vacuum cleaner.
Oh, like a Dyson.
I don't want to like
an Oric instead of a Dyson.
I don't want to brand shame live on the air.
No, let's not.
In the air? Is this considered the air?
On the air. Yeah, we're on the air.
I think we can move on from this one pretty quickly because the next one is awesome.
Yeah, so I Come From Nowhere, wicked guitar solo, danceable beat.
Yeah.
Roy Estrada's vocals, they were weird when I first heard him in 2002. Now that the guy's in jail for being a kid diddler, I can't even with the guy. Like, I'm sorry, rotten hell, rotten jail, piece of shit. Like,
let's move on to the next.
I don't care that he's from the original Mothers of Invention. You fuck with kids, you're scum. So
can we talk about Drowning Witch? I really like this song.
Right. So this is a very brisk listen. I think in total it's like a 32-minute album, which is short, even by Frank's standards.
That is short for Frank.
So 3 tracks on both sides. Andy Hollenden teaches the IU class on Frank Zappa, and he says that side B of Drowning Witch is one of Frank's best sides, certainly from the latter day of his career.
I don't wholly disagree with that.
Right. So we get 3 tracks, and again, just like side A, they all segue. Although I would say here much more cohesively.
Yeah.
To the point that it almost can feel like one long song.
I think Drowning Witch is super catchy. I really like this song.
Yeah, this is a 12-minute track. You get 2 minutes of the song itself. It's like a jazz tune. You get 2 minutes of song and then the solo portion.
Right.
So
And
Take it away. I want to hear your thoughts on
the
that.
solo portion is killer. You have Chad Wackerman, who is not my favorite of Zappa's drummers.
I would call him my least favorite.
Ooh, really?
Not an insult. It's like, of his 8 drummers, he's my 8th favorite.
Yeah.
He's not flashy, not known for flashy playing.
No, and I mean, Frank had so many killer drummers.
But he plays flashy here.
Yeah, he does. And I think I really enjoy his playing on this track. The guitar again is super, super awesome.
It's a tight performance. Actually, a tight composite of performances.
Right. I really love that.
Yeah.
And another just catchy track. I love this.
Let's talk about the lyrics in a second, but before that, saying it's a composite of performances, this is Frank as an editor at his best. This is several different performances. Again, this is all in his book. Mm-hmm. He talks about this being a musically complex tune and being so difficult that they never played it right once. So he seamed together a few different live takes in the solo portion here to create a cohesive, singular recording that was up to his standards.
Right.
Now, he's doing it for the first time here in '82 with his digital recording setup. This is the second studio album to come out of the Utility Muffin Research Kitchen. Now, a couple years later, You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore would feature multiple tracks where you have an intro from 71, a solo portion from 82, and then back to 76. So Frank is flexing his muscles here for the first time. I don't think you can notice the difference. What do you think?
I don't notice the difference.
Right. So the lyrics. It's about the witch drowning in the waterways.
Yeah.
And there's this running thread in Frank's lyrics throughout his canon about pollution.
Yes.
It starts on Uncle Meat, 9 different types of industrial pollution. Here, he feels bad for the witch because he predicts that she'll die from radiation poisoning before she drowns.
Before she actually drowns.
Right.
Yep. I love all the visuals of her like sinking in the color of the water, and I just love the song.
Musically, it's a tone poem.
Completely.
It's very underwater sounding. You get this with the guitar, the synth. It's a cool track.
I really like this song.
Very well orchestrated. Then it jumps right into a song called Envelopes.
Which is
actually, no, let's call it Envelopes. If we talk about the London Symphony Orchestra album, we'll call it Envelopes.
Okay, Envelopes.
Envelopes here on Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch, orchestrated for a rock band. This is a tune that Frank composed. This is lines and dots on paper, rendered by a band. What do you think of this one? It's 2.5 minutes long.
It's a super quick. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is it's super quick. For me, honestly, this one doesn't fully stick out for me. Not sure why.
It's a little melancholy. It starts with the piano. It's got that guitar ostinato,
which is good. I do like that part.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's one of those things. It's like it's hard. You've listened to it, and it's hard to kind of like remember after you've heard it. It's kind of hard for me, at least. It's kind of hard to go back and pinpoint.
By the time he had recorded it, by the time he records it here, 82 that it's coming out, recorded in 81 at some point, it had been in his catalog for several years, performed as far back as the Vinnie Colaiuta days.
Right.
So now here he is, like one rhythm section later, which Frank's catalog really can be broken down by which rhythm section. It's the era. And yeah, I think it sounds better on the London Symphony Orchestra album. Yeah. It's better orchestrated for an orchestra.
Well, we'll have to.
Maybe we'll have to listen to Envelopes later. Envelopes here segues right into Teenage Prostitute.
Which immediately jumps out because it has a female vocalist.
Right. And it's also Frank doing a song about sex and about the sexualization of minors, which is a subject he did not shy away from, even when he had a baby daughter doing Brown Shoes Don't Make It.
Right.
Now here he is on the same album as Valley Girl. And Ben Watson talks about that in his book about, you get the Valley Girl on one side. On the other side of the valley, you get the teenage prostitute on the Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
So It's a tragic thing.
Of course.
And Frank was not afraid to take a frank look at these things.
Such a pun.
Blistering performance musically.
Right. And
What's your take on the song?
I mean, I totally agree. I think that's another thing that's like, he's not one to shy away from talking about things honestly. And I think this is one of those things where he's like, he calls things out for how ugly they really are, how ugly they can be.
There's this blend of a dash of scorn and a lot of pity.
Mm-hmm.
If it sounds a bit paternal, the guy's a dad.
Right, of course.
And that's just going to shine through. And he's concerned about her well-being.
Right.
And her happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But that's more matched by pity, that she's a slave to her pimp.
Right.
That she's underage.
And that it's because her parents were pieces of shit.
Right. And this is a continuation of Mom and Dad, which we talked about yesterday.
Right,
on We're Only In It for the Money. Or the chick from Wet T-Shirt Contest. Mary.
There's a lot of themes running through about bad parents or parents that don't understand. Parents that don't really care or aren't really tapped in.
Right.
Which I think, I know we talked about Frank as a dad earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a lot of relevance there.
I'm sure Frank heard a lot of stories too.
Oh yeah. I think he was not in circles, because I think he was really like, he's a musician's musician, and I think those are the circles that he ran in. But living in Hollywood, living in California, and living in LA, I think there were probably a lot of other people that had kids and kind of just let them run wild.
Yeah, he was certainly empathic to that.
Right.
And I mean, again, not to air out his dirty laundry, but he was no stranger to the groupie phenomenon.
Sure.
And I'm sure, again, he heard stories. Just what drives people to run away? What sends people away from home?
Right.
So on that note, it's a bit bittersweet.
Definitely.
And again, a brisk performance ending a rather brisk album.
Yeah.
So to get back to what we said at the start of this, about 20 minutes ago, TV episode length, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Perfect.
Is the fact that we forget how good this album is because parts of it are forgettable.
Parts of it are forgettable.
No Not Now is strong.
Super strong.
Valley Girl's a hit.
That's what I was going to say is what is strong on this album is strong, and do not overlook it because it has a few weak points.
Drowning Witch is a great tune. Envelopes is short but sweet. And then Teenage Prostitute, B-side of the Valley Girl single.
Sad, but still good.
Sad but still good.
Yeah.
Stab. So,
anything else before we say bye?
No, Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch. Being the album that had Frank's big hit from the time on it, I've noticed this is one you'll see a lot in used record stores. For better or worse.
We'll have to look for it because I love the album art.
Yes.
So easy, so simple.
I did mine all by myself since we don't have a copy at home. We listen to it digitally. So we will see you all tomorrow for night 7 of Zappadan. And we will just keep on shuggling. Oh, wait, that's John Fogerty.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh. Oh, no, I don't believe it.
Happy rest of your Sunday.
See y'all.